Mom, why are there toys all over my living room? Oh Madison, you're home early. I was going to tell me what? Why is Kelsey's furniture in my house? They needed a place to stay and you were overseas. It's not like you were using it. This is my house. You had no right. My mother moved my sister's family into our home while we were deployed overseas. My name is Madison. Let me start by giving you some context about my life. I'm 33 years old and I serve in the Air Force as a communications officer. I've been in the military for 10 years now, and it's been an incredible journey. I met my husband during a joint training exercise at Nellis Air Force Base. He's a fellow officer, and we've been married for 6 years now. Greg and I saved aggressively for years to buy our first home. We wanted something we could come back to between deployments, a place that was truly ours. 4 years ago, we bought a beautiful 3-bedroom craftsman-style house in a quiet neighborhood near Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington State. It was our dream, modest, but perfect for us, with a covered porch and enough space to eventually start a family. Because we deploy frequently, we needed someone trustworthy to check on the house periodically. My mother, Carol, seemed like the logical choice. She was retired, lived about an hour away in Olympia, and had always been dependable. We gave her a spare key with explicit instructions: check the mail once a week, make sure pipes don't freeze in winter, ensure everything's secure. Simple, right? Wrong. My sister Kelsey is 5 years younger than me. She's always been the one who needed rescuing, dropped out of community college twice, jumped from job to job, made impulsive decisions without thinking about consequences. She married her husband Troy when she was 22. He worked sporadically doing landscaping, and they had 3 kids in quick succession, twin girls named Addison and Bailey, who are now 7, and a son named Carson, who's 5. Kelsey and Troy were perpetually broke. They'd lived in a series of rental apartments, always behind on rent, always one emergency away from eviction. Carol constantly bailed them out, paid their rent, bought groceries, watched the kids for free while Kelsey worked part-time at a nail salon. I helped when I could, but I was firm about boundaries. I'd send money for the kids' birthdays, buy them clothes and school supplies, but I refused to enable Kelsey and Troy's poor financial decisions. This made me the mean sister and unsupportive daughter in Carol's eyes. Kelsey's struggling, Carol would say. She needs family support. She needs to make better choices, I'd reply. Troy needs to keep a job. They need to live within their means. Not everyone is as perfect as you, Madison. That was always her line. I was the perfect one who'd made all the right choices, so I couldn't possibly understand Kelsey's struggles. Never mind that my success came from hard work, discipline, and sacrifice. But I never imagined how far Carol would go to protect Kelsey. 9 months ago, Greg and I got deployment orders, a 10-month assignment to Ramstein Air Base in Germany. We'd be together, which was lucky, but we'd be halfway across the world. We spent weeks preparing the house, winterizing pipes, setting up automatic bill payments, arranging for lawn care, and of course, confirming with Carol that she'd check on things weekly. Of course, sweetie, she assured me. Don't worry about a thing. Just focus on your service. We left in August, entrusting our home to my mother's care. The first few months, everything seemed fine. Carol would send occasional texts: house looks good. Picked up your mail. Everything's secure. Standard updates. Nothing concerning. Then around November, her messages stopped. I texted asking if everything was okay, and she'd respond with short, vague replies: all fine, busy with the holidays. House is good. I was busy with work. Greg was pulling long hours. And honestly, I didn't think too much about it. I trusted my mother. That was my mistake. Our deployment got cut short by 3 weeks due to operational changes. We weren't complaining, we were thrilled to be coming home early. I texted Carol to let her know we'd be back on a Wednesday afternoon instead of late May as originally planned. She responded 6 hours later with just, okay. No excitement, no questions about our flight, nothing. I found it odd, but didn't dwell on it. Greg and I landed on a Wednesday morning after 18 hours of travel. We were exhausted, jet-lagged, and desperate to sleep in our own bed. We caught a ride from the base, and when we pulled up to our house around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I immediately noticed something was wrong. There were scooters on the front lawn, toys scattered across the porch, a Dodge Caravan I didn't recognize in the driveway, parked in my spot. What the hell? Greg said, voicing exactly what I was thinking. We approached cautiously. Through the front window, I could see people moving around inside. Children's laughter echoed from somewhere in the house. My heart was pounding as I unlocked the front door with my key. The scene inside was surreal. Our living room had been completely rearranged. Our furniture was pushed against the walls or missing entirely, replaced by a leather sectional I'd never seen before. There were toys everywhere, action figures, dolls, building blocks scattered across the floor. The TV was on, playing some animated movie. And there, sitting on the unfamiliar couch, was my sister Kelsey. She looked up, startled, as we walked in. Madison? What are you doing here? What am I doing here? This is my house. What are you doing here? Before she could answer, Carol emerged from the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. Her face went pale when she saw us. Mom, why are there toys all over my living room? Oh Madison, you're home early. I was going to tell me what? Why is Kelsey's furniture in my house? They needed a place to stay and you were overseas. It's not like you were using it. This is my house. You had no right. The noise attracted Troy, who came down the stairs holding Carson. The twins appeared from what used to be our guest bedroom, now clearly functioning as their room. Greg stood beside me, too stunned to speak. I could see his jaw clenching, a sign he was trying very hard to stay calm. Madison, just let me explain, Carol started. Explain? You moved my sister's entire family into our home without permission. How is there an explanation for that? They were going to be evicted. They had nowhere to go. You weren't here and the house was just sitting empty. Because we live here. We were on deployment, not abandoning our property. Kelsey finally spoke up, defensive and indignant. Don't act like this is such a huge deal. We've been taking care of the place. It's not like we trashed it. I looked around at the disaster that used to be my carefully maintained home. There were stains on the carpet, scuff marks on the walls, and I could only imagine what the rest of the house looked like. Get out, I said quietly. Madison, be reasonable, Carol started. Get out. All of you. Get out of my house right now. We can't just leave, Troy had the audacity to say. We don't have anywhere to go. That's not my problem. You're trespassing. Leave now or I'm calling the police. You wouldn't call the cops on your own family, Kelsey said, but she looked uncertain. I pulled out my phone. Try me. Greg finally spoke, his voice cold and controlled. You have 1 hour to gather your belongings and vacate the premises. Anything left behind will be considered abandoned property. The next hour was chaos. Kelsey and Troy scrambled to pack their things, the kids crying and confused. Carol kept trying to negotiate, trying to convince me to just give them a few days to find somewhere. They've had months to find somewhere, I said. How long have they been living here? Silence. How long? Since September, Carol admitted quietly. September? They've been living in my house for 8 months? You were overseas. You weren't using it. That doesn't give you the right to give away my property. Do you understand that what you did is illegal? I could have you arrested for this. I'm your mother. I was trying to help your sister by violating my trust and stealing my house? That's not help. That's betrayal. They loaded up the minivan, which apparently Troy had bought with money they should have been saving for rent, and a U-Haul truck that Carol paid for. The kids were crying. Kelsey was crying. And Carol was furious with me for being heartless. As they were leaving, Kelsey turned to me with pure venom in her eyes. I hope you're proud of yourself. You're putting children on the street. You put your children in this position by not planning better. And Mom put all of us in this position by overstepping massively. Don't you dare put this on me. They left. Greg and I stood in the wreckage of our home, too shocked and angry to even know where to start. The damage was extensive. Our master bedroom had been converted into Kelsey and Troy's room. They'd moved our bed to the guest room and brought in their own furniture. The walls had new holes for mounting TVs and shelves. The carpet throughout the house was stained and damaged, juice stains, what looked like crayon on one section, and mysterious dark spots I didn't want to identify. The kitchen was a disaster. Broken cabinet hinges, a cracked countertop, greasy buildup everywhere. It looked like they'd never cleaned the stovetop in 8 months. Our garage had been converted into a storage area for their belongings. My carefully organized tools and equipment were shoved into corners or missing entirely. Greg's workbench was buried under boxes. The lawn was overgrown and patchy from neglect and the kids playing on it constantly. Our flower beds, which I'd spent hours cultivating, were trampled and dead. "This is going to cost thousands to fix," Greg said, surveying the damage. "We're sending them a bill." We spent the rest of the day taking photos and videos of every damaged area. Then we started the process of reclaiming our home, throwing out garbage, cleaning, assessing what needed professional repair. That evening, Carol called. I let it go to voicemail. She called 4 more times. Finally, I answered. "You need to apologize to your sister," she started without preamble. "Excuse me? You humiliated her. Threw her family out with nowhere to go. Treated her like a criminal. She was a criminal. She was illegally occupying my property, and you facilitated it. I was helping family. That's what family does. Family doesn't steal. You violated my trust in the worst possible way. You took my keys, which I gave you for emergencies and maintenance, and you gave away my house to someone else. It was just sitting there empty. It's my house. Whether I'm living in it or not, whether I'm across town or across the world, it's mine. You had no right. I'm your mother. I did what I thought was best." Best for who? Certainly not for me. You prioritized Kelsey's poor planning over my property rights and our relationship. How am I supposed to ever trust you again? If you don't forgive me, you're destroying this family. I didn't destroy anything. You did that when you betrayed me. I hung up. Over the next week, we got the full scope of the situation. We checked our utility bills. They'd skyrocketed during those 8 months. We found evidence they'd been having parties, based on empty beer cans and damage. We discovered several items of value were missing: a TV from the bedroom, some of Greg's electronics, decorative items my grandmother had given us. We filed a police report for the stolen items and the unauthorized occupancy. The detective, a man named Officer Martinez, was sympathetic but realistic. "This is a civil matter more than criminal, since your mother had keys. But you have grounds for a lawsuit to recover damages." We hired an attorney, a sharp woman named Ms. Kennedy who specialized in property disputes. She drafted a demand letter to Carol, Kelsey, and Troy for the cost of repairs, increased utilities, stolen property, and loss of use. Total, $47,000. Carol called me immediately after receiving the letter, hysterical. "You're suing your own family over money? Over theft and property damage?" "Yes. I raised you better than this." "You clearly didn't, since you think stealing is acceptable when it's family. That money is supposed to be your inheritance. You're taking from your own future." "I don't want an inheritance from you. I want compensation for what you cost me." She hung up. I didn't hear from her for weeks. Kelsey and Troy couldn't pay, obviously. They filed for bankruptcy shortly after. Apparently, they'd been drowning in debt already, and this was the final straw. The bankruptcy meant we couldn't recover anything from them. Carol could pay, but refused. "I'm not paying for helping my daughter in need." Ms. Kennedy took her to court. The case was straightforward: unauthorized occupancy, documented damage, costs assessed by professionals. We had photos, videos, contractor estimates, utility bills, police reports, everything we needed. The judge ruled in our favor completely, ordering Carol to pay the full $47,000 plus court costs. She paid, but the money came from what she'd been saving for a comfortable retirement, her travel fund, her hobby money, her safety net gone. She had to sell some assets and dramatically cut back her lifestyle. My extended family was appalled at me, not at Carol. Aunts and uncles called me heartless, greedy, vindictive. "She's your mother," they'd say. "She was just trying to help." Only my father's sister, Aunt Diane, supported me. What Carol did was wrong. Period. Madison and Greg have every right to be angry and to seek compensation. Actions have consequences. Carol tried to turn the family against me, painting herself as the victim. Some relatives bought it. Others stayed neutral and quietly distanced themselves from the drama. The repairs took 4 months and cost even more than we'd estimated, $56,000 total. Our insurance covered some of it after we proved unauthorized occupancy, but we still paid about $18,000 out of pocket on top of what we recovered from Carol. During this time, I learned more about what had happened while we were gone. Neighbors filled in details. Kelsey and Troy had loud parties. The kids were often unsupervised in the yard. There were multiple noise complaints filed. One neighbor, Mrs. Chun, pulled me aside during the repairs. "I'm so glad you're back. We thought maybe you'd sold the house or rented it out, but things kept getting worse. I almost called the police several times." "I wish you had," I told her. "We had no idea any of this was happening." After the repairs were complete and our home finally felt like ours again, Greg and I had to make difficult decisions about the future. We changed all the locks immediately. Obviously. We installed a security system with cameras. And we had to figure out what to do about property management during future deployments. We could never trust Carol again. That was clear. We hired a professional property management company and gave them full authority to handle anything related to the house. It cost money, but it was worth it for the peace of mind. We couldn't risk this ever happening again. 6 months after we returned, Kelsey reached out via email. It was long, rambling, and mostly self-pitying. She talked about how hard things had been, how they'd lost everything in the bankruptcy, how the kids were struggling. Then at the end, "I know you're still angry, but we're family. Families forgive." I wrote back a single sentence: "Forgiveness requires accountability and genuine remorse. You've shown neither." She didn't respond. Carol sent a card on my birthday. Nothing written inside, just her signature. A month later, she sent another card at Christmas. Same thing, no message, just her name. I threw both away without acknowledgement. My father, who divorced Carol years ago and lived across the country in Florida, called after hearing about everything through the family grapevine. "Your mother always had boundary issues, but this is beyond anything I imagined. I'm sorry you had to deal with this, Madison." "Thanks, Dad. Are you going to forgive her eventually?" "I honestly don't know. What she did broke something fundamental. Every time we deploy now, I worry about what we'll come home to. She stole my sense of security in the place that's supposed to be my refuge." "That's fair. Don't let anyone pressure you into reconciliation before you're ready, if you ever are." A year after the incident, we got new deployment orders. The anxiety was real. Even though we had professional management, even though we had cameras, I still worried. But the property management company was excellent. We returned to a house exactly as we'd left it. Clean, secure, untouched. That successful deployment helped heal some of the trauma from the first experience. But it didn't erase what Carol had done. Today, Greg and I have been back for 5 months. Our house is truly ours again. We've replaced everything that reminded us of the violation, redecorated to our taste, made it feel like home again. We're talking about starting a family soon, now that we feel stable and secure. I haven't spoken to Carol in almost 2 years. I haven't seen Kelsey or her family. I occasionally hear updates through Aunt Diane. Kelsey and Troy are living in a small apartment in Tacoma, still struggling financially. Carol is bitter and tells everyone who will listen that I'm cruel and unforgiving. Some family members have reached out suggesting reconciliation. Life is short, they say. Don't you want to make peace before it's too late? Maybe someday. But right now, I'm protecting my peace and my home. What Carol did wasn't a mistake or a miscommunication. It was a deliberate, calculated betrayal. She gave away something that wasn't hers to give, prioritized one daughter over another, and showed complete disrespect for my property and my trust. That's not something you just get over for the sake of family harmony. Greg supports whatever decision I make. I'll follow your lead, he says. But for what it's worth, I don't think you owe her anything. She made her choices, and she's living with the consequences. He's right. She made her choices, and I'm making mine. Sometimes late at night when I can't sleep, I think about everything that happened. I replay that moment when we walked through our front door and saw strangers living in our home. The shock, the betrayal, the anger, it all comes flooding back. Greg notices when I get like this. He'll put his arm around me and remind me that we're safe now, that our home is secure, that we made the right decisions. "Do you ever regret suing your mom?" he asked me once. I thought about it for a long time before answering. No. Because if I'd let it go, it would have sent a message that what she did was acceptable. That family can violate your boundaries, steal from you, and face no consequences as long as they claim good intentions. And that's the core of it, isn't it? Carol truly believes she did nothing wrong. In her mind, she was helping Kelsey, and my house was just sitting empty anyway. My property rights, my boundaries, my trust, none of that mattered compared to Kelsey's immediate needs. But here's what she'll never understand, it wasn't just about the house. It was about the violation of trust between a mother and daughter. It was about being treated as if my hard work, my sacrifices, my service to my country meant nothing. It was about watching my mother prioritize my sister's poor choices over my well-being. The financial damage was real and significant, but the emotional damage cut even deeper. I've been in therapy since we got back. My therapist, Dr. Foster, has helped me work through the complex feelings, the anger, the grief, the sense of betrayal. You set a boundary, she told me. A very reasonable boundary. And when that boundary was violated in the most extreme way possible, you enforced consequences. That's healthy. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we hadn't come home early. Would Carol have ever told us? Would Kelsey and Troy have moved out before we returned, leaving us to discover the damage without understanding how it happened? I think Carol would have tried to hide it. She would have paid for some repairs, gotten rid of the evidence, and hoped we'd never know. That thought makes me even angrier than the original betrayal. Aunt Diane told me last month that Carol cries about the situation to anyone who will listen. She's told the family that she's the real victim here, that her ungrateful daughter destroyed their relationship over money. But she's still not taking responsibility. She's still not acknowledging what she actually did wrong. And until she does, if she ever does, there's no path forward for us. Greg and I are moving forward with our lives. We've talked seriously about starting a family. We've discussed what that will look like with my career, with deployments, with the uncertainty of military life. One thing we know for certain, our children will grow up understanding boundaries, accountability, and the importance of keeping your word. So here's my question for you. If your parent gave away your home to a sibling without permission while you were deployed or away, causing massive damage and violating your trust, would you ever be able to forgive them? Or is that a betrayal too fundamental to come back from?